Chairman, and thank all the witnesses for being here today. Very important issue, and rightly we should be concerned about the integrity of our election system, because we're only as good as the integrity of this election system. After spending 30 years in the IT business, this is something that is very important to me, and in an area that I do understand, at least from the technological side. Another area that I think we have to be very conscious of is the federal involvement, because typically whatever we get involved with doesn't run as well as if the state is doing it themselves. So I want to be very conscious of whatever role the federal government plays is very limited to especially in an authority stance. But understand that we do have some things that we can do as far as setting recommended standards. But recently, the Secretary of Homeland Security has reported saying that DHS is considering whether the state electoral apparatus should be designated as critical infrastructure. Dr. Romine, is this appropriate? That in your opinion?
Well, that's a policy decision that's way above my pay grade, so I don't have any input that I can provide you for that.
Well, I mean, do you have any idea what the benefits or the disadvantages would be of declaring these as critical infrastructure?
I can't speak to that. I know that NIST provided a significant benefit in partnership with the private sector on the development of a cybersecurity framework for improving the cybersecurity of critical infrastructures that has received a lot of attention and a lot of accolades. But that's not limited to critical infrastructures. Any organization of any size in any sector is free to adopt that framework.
So you are working with DHS to help the states understand the critical nature of their electoral systems, or?
Absolutely. We're partnering with DHS and with the Department of Justice on trying to understand how we can ensure widest dissemination of best practices to the states and municipalities. And as was mentioned earlier, request to DHS for assistance is not predicated solely on whether you are designated as a critical infrastructure. That request can be made without that designation.
Does this include cyber hygiene?
It does include the request for, my understanding is it includes a request for DHS to do scanning of systems, for example, but only upon request.
So they'll be voluntary, be like a stress test on their system?
It would be voluntary.
Are we applying lessons learned from the Presidential Commission on enhancing national cybersecurity in making these recommendations for the states?
So the Presidential Commission on Cybersecurity has not yet reached the stage of finalizing the recommendations, so those are not being incorporated in these guidelines. And I would put it sort of in the reverse, in the sense that the commissioners are actually taking a look at best practices out in the field in discussions with the IT industry and with stakeholders around the country to try to develop the best possible recommendations for the benefit of this administration and the next.
So NIST's stance on this is to work within the framework of the federal government to come up with recommendations that the states may or may not implement, and with flexibility to where they can be customized to the state's individual networks.
That is correct.
Secretary Shedler,
Yes.
how do you feel about that?
Well, I do not think critical infrastructure is needed at all. I mean, as was indicated by Mr. Romaine and I did a little bit earlier, we can go to Homeland Security now. We can get those tests by FBI. We have a committee. Matter of fact, your Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, who has been very active in this whole process with several of us, is one of the committee members that we've appointed from NASS to serve on the Homeland Security Committee and to do best practices and the like. So most states are cooperating with their local FBI agents when needed. And I just, you know, again, I don't mean to be flippant, but do we really want to create a new TSA for elections in this country, or a new postal service? I just don't think we need that. The Constitution says very vividly it's up to the states for the time, place, and manner in which we conduct elections. It is a constitutional issue, and I understand that from the rhetoric, that's not the intent. But to go and put the national elections on par with the banking system and the electrical grid, in my point, in my position, is way overreach, unnecessary, and we can accomplish the same goals. It's not that we don't want their support and assistance when we need it, but we can accomplish that in a far less intrusive way. I think if we just keep things on pat now, and again, I think the answer is part of new equipment, new Harvard dollars, wherever it may be, to improve these systems. We're working on trying to get a system where you can vote anywhere in the state, just like was represented earlier. So critical infrastructure would be an absolute, and I think I speak again for, I don't know of any Secretary of State that's voiced an opinion that they want to be part of that.
Do you feel what NIST is doing is beneficial to you?
Yes.
Do you get, or do you feel in any way that what's happening right now is a camel nose under the tent?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. And the gentleman